Thank you, Jamie. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. It's great to see you all. Thank you for spending some time with us this afternoon. We're delighted to see you. A number of folks from the media, a lot of our sponsors, some fans, all of you dialing in via the live stream. Welcome to you as well. And it's a super exciting day for the Chicago Fire, a historic day, as we introduce Gregg Berhalter as our new Director of Football and head coach. As Gabe mentioned, Gregg is the 10th coach in Chicago Fire history. And you all know Gregg. He's a very accomplished person in the world of soccer. I think he's one of the most talented sporting leaders, head coaches in North American soccer. And we're just honored and delighted to have Gregg join us. And I have no doubt that he will take our organization to the next level in terms of performance. And he's just been a pleasure to work with, and I couldn't be more excited to have Gregg join us. I thought I'd do a couple things in my few minutes before I turn it over to Gregg. One is to give you a little background on the search process, how we came to find Gregg. And so the way it began was in August. Georg Heitz, now our former sporting head, came to me and said he wanted to head back to Europe at the end of the year. And this was no surprise. Georg, as soon as he started 5 years ago, he said his eventual plan was to get back to Europe. So it was kind of not a total surprise to me. But we immediately went to work, and we knew we didn't have much time. The preseason starts in January. We wanted to give whoever we brought in enough time to be able to work on the roster, look at the organization, make changes. So we wanted to get somebody in as quickly as possible. So three of us, Georg Heitz, Eddie Rock, who is our head of football operations at the Fire, and myself put together a list of candidates, and we came up with a list of 80 candidates who we thought would be good for the role. That's both inbound, we had just tremendous interest around the world for this role. So inbound from overseas, throughout MLS, and then we proactively identified a large number of candidates. So we had a pool of 80 candidates. And then we narrowed that down pretty quickly to 3. We didn't want to have a huge interviewing process. We wanted to aim really high, get our 3 best candidates. If that didn't work, we'd go back to the well and start again. But let's start with 3. And we set a goal to ideally get somebody in by October 1st. Again, give them plenty of time to work on the roster. Gregg was on that list. We brought him into the office and interviewed them. We spent 3 hours with Gregg. And he just did a phenomenal job. I think after the interview, we all walked out of there and said, that's our guy. And so very impressive in the interview. Subsequently, we spent a couple of hours at my house. Gregg came over. I think he interviewed me as much as I interviewed him. He said it was a no-brainer in the video to join the Fire, but believe me, he had a lot of questions. And so we spent a lot of time. We made Gregg an offer. Fortunately, he accepted. That was on a Friday a couple weeks ago. Saturday, he came over to my house, spent a couple hours working on the roster. So as soon as he signed, he was in over at my house working on the roster. This guy is all in. So it was super exciting to see the drive and the commitment. So why did we choose Gregg? So I've known Gregg for 3 to 4 years now, and as soon as I bought into the Fire 5 years ago, Gregg was kind enough to reach out to me and suggest lunch, and we got together for lunch. And even on that first lunch, I was super impressed with his knowledge of the game. And I got to know Gregg over the subsequent few years. We'd have lunch occasionally, get together. He's got just such a deep background in the sport, as you know, over 30 years experience, both as a player and as a coach. So he's played in Europe, the Bundesliga, the Premier League, ended his career at the LA Galaxy. He's played in MLS. So wide variety of experience as a player. And then as a coach, he coached in Sweden. He coached in MLS with the Columbus Crew for 5 years. 4 out of those 5 years, he got to the playoffs. 1 year was a runner-up in the playoffs for the MLS Cup. And then he's best known for his work with the U.S. men's national team, where I thought he just did exemplary work. Getting the U.S. to qualify for the World Cup out of group stage. I thought he just did a phenomenal job with the U.S. national team. So super impressed with his background. And all of that you can just see in terms of his knowledge of the game, his understanding of the game. He just operates at a different level. He's also super analytical, very process-oriented, very methodical. He doesn't shoot from the hip. He's very careful in his decision-making, does his research, and then is very decisive. He also has a very large network. Having played the game and coached the game in Europe, in the US, he's seen the game from multiple perspectives and has built up a large number of contacts around the world, which I think will be beneficial to the Fire. He's literally has a global brand, which is very impressive. He's also a strong leader and communicator, gives very clear instructions. And I like the way he leads. He does things, for example, with the men's national team, I was impressed, where he took the team out to California, trained with the Navy SEALs. To do things like that, I think, is a real sign of a great leader, trying to learn from other leaders and how you can always get better, and I think will help galvanize our team. He also has deep ties to Chicago. He's raised his family here, so he's connected to the club more than a lot of other candidates. He knows the city, he loves the city, and I think will represent the city very well. And then finally, and hugely important to me, was I wanted somebody who wanted this job as much as we wanted them. That they weren't doing it just for the money or for any vacation in the US, that they really wanted this opportunity, that they saw the potential in the Fire. We're often called the sleeping giant in MLS. We're a top 3 market. We should be up at the top. And we wanted somebody who had real heart for that. And Gregg really exemplified that. So a couple just quick things before I turn it over to Gregg. One, I want to thank Georg Heitz, who's been our sporting director for 5 years. I know we've had mixed results on the field, but Georg is leaving the organization much stronger than he found it 5 years ago. He's built up our academy. We've added the reserve team. He's helped with the performance center that we're about to, the Endeavor Health Performance Center that we're about to bring online. A number of key signings, Hugo Kuipers, Carlos Terán, John Duran, who's not with us, is already one of the highest transfers ever in MLS. And if Aston Villa sells him, as they plan to soon at the number they want, he'll be the highest transfer ever in MLS. So he's done a lot of good. He'll continue to be in the Fire family with Lugano, on the board of directors of Lugano. So a heartfelt thank you to Georg for all that he's done for this organization. I also want to thank Frank Klopas. Frank has been fantastic. If there's anyone who loves the Fire more than Frank, I've not met this person. Frank is just so enthusiastic about the club, loves the club. And as soon as we mentioned to Frank the possibility of bringing Gregg on, he got behind it 100%. And he said, you got to get this guy, you got to get this guy. I'll step aside. I still want to be part of the organization, which he will. And he was very active and a key part in helping to recruit Gregg out of the club. So a huge thank you to Frank for all he's done. He'll remain vice president of football operations and work developing talent across all of our teams, being a bridge to Lugano, helping acquire new talent, developing talent. So we didn't want a ceremonial role for Frank. We wanted a very meaty, important role, and that's what we came up with. And then, so just a couple quick things. One is just reflections on this season. I feel I'd be remiss if I didn't address that. And obviously very, very disappointed in the outcome with the season. It did not at all meet our expectations, which was at a minimum is to make the playoffs and then to have a deep run and contend for championships. So we did not make that goal. So just a lot of disappointment. And it wasn't due to a lack of hard work. The guys worked very hard. Coaching staff worked very hard. But for whatever reason, things did not gel for us on the pitch. And it's a collective responsibility, me more than anyone. The buck stops here, as Harry Truman said. But it's all of us. It's not one person, but just very disappointed with the outcome in the season. But at the same time, I'm very excited for next season. It's not far away. Preseason's in January. A lot of things to be excited about. We'll have Gregg on board to lead the sporting organization. We have the new Endeavor Health Performance Center coming online in December, which I think will be a game changer. 5.5 soccer fields in the heart of Chicago, Roosevelt and Ashland. So you can imagine from a player perspective, it'll feel like a new club. Instead of going out to Bridgeview, SeatGeek, you go to our own performance center. The first time the club has owned its own performance center. Brand new, skyline in the background, the heart of Chicago, new leadership. So it's going to feel like a new club to players, which I think will give us a boost. Our academies, if you look at the talent we're developing, Gregg and I are both excited about developing talent. We're in a very rich market here in Chicago, but our academies are doing well. Our U15s won the national championship last year. We have 4 U15s on the national team. I think the next club is 2. So we've got a lot of young talent coming up through our academies. Gary Lewis does a terrific job there. Chicago Fire 2 in the playoffs. Come out Sunday, see them play Orlando in their first playoff game. So the reserve team is doing well. So there's a lot of up-and-coming talent. And you've seen we want to promote talent. Chris Brady, Brian Gutierrez. So we want to make sure that's a key part of our future. And then finally, I'm confident we're on a path to have a team that represents the city of Chicago, that reflects our values. We aspire to be a world-class soccer organization. And I think with all of these things, new leadership, we're definitely on a path to get there. And I have a high degree of confidence you'll see a new re-energized Fire come 2025. So with that, let me turn it over to Gregg.
Thanks, Joe. First of all, thank you everyone for attending, taking time out of your day to come here and welcome me to the club and to the Chicago Fire. I want to first thank Joe Mansueto for giving me the opportunity and entrusting me with this massive responsibility. There were really 2 main reasons that made this opportunity compelling. And the first thing was alignment. Me and Joe are very aligned on where we want this club to go. It's really about creating a established, successful, top-performing club in Major League Soccer and having the consistency throughout the time that we're here. The second thing is about potential. This market, this club, this team has a ton of potential, and that's what makes it exciting. When I think about the new training facility coming online, it's probably the best, one of the top 1 or 2 or 3 in Major League Soccer, comparable to top European facilities, an amazing facility to welcome the players into. The market of Chicago, the fan base here, I really see this opportunity as a sleeping giant. And we're going to give everything we have to make this team, to return this team to the top of Major League Soccer. Chicago is about community. It's also about sports. And that's what's exciting. It's a world-class city, a city that players will want to come to. And it's a soccer-rich city. I remember the days in '94 World Cup, Soldier Field hosting a World Cup game or multiple World Cup games. And for me, it's really about a commitment to the fans to give them a product that they can be proud of, that they can come to the stadium and really resonates with them, that they're excited to watch this team play on the field. We want to be an exciting team in Major League Soccer. We want to be a dominant team in Major League Soccer. And it will take some time, but we will get there. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. We'll now start the Q&A portion of the press conference, starting here front row with Joe Chats. Joe?
Hey guys, Joe Chats on Tap Sportsnet. Greg, nice to meet you. Joe, nice to see you again. Joe, I'm curious, you mentioned 3 finalists, including Greg. Were all 3 people you were looking at for both the director of football and the head coaching role? And what made Greg the candidate that you wanted to give both roles to? Thank you.
That's a good question. Thank you, Joe. Initially we were looking to just fill Georg's spot, the sporting head spot. And that's the path we went down. As I mentioned, we had 3 candidates, 1 from abroad, 2 we invited from the U.S. But we were just thinking of the sporting role. When we came across Gregg, he expressed a desire to do both, sporting head and head coach. While that was not initially our intention, because of who Gregg is, and he succeeded in this dual role before, we were confident that it would work under Gregg's leadership. And from my perspective, what I wanted to do, what I try to do, is create an environment where people can do their best work. And if he can do his best work as director of football and head coach, so there's this seamless connection, I'm fine with it. And he'll build underneath him an organization to offload the things. Obviously, you can't do 2 full-time jobs, but he'll build an organization around him. And I have every confidence he can do that.
Tim Hossie, Minute Red 97. Thanks, both of you, for taking the time today. So about that dual role and building out the front office staff, you mentioned how soon preseason starts. I mean, in January, so there's not really a long offseason in MLS at this point. How quickly do you both expect the team to be moving on that front?
Why don't you take this?
Okay. We expect to move quickly, really quickly. I mean, the work has started. If I can expand a little bit on the dual role, I think it's important to give visibility into that. I had learned a lot of lessons from the Columbus days. Working 6 a.m. to 10 at night every day for 5 years. It aged me. That's why I don't have as much hair as I used to have. And you guys can go back and check the pictures out to prove it. But in all seriousness, I realized, how I need help. And really part of the alignment part with Joe was saying, okay, we want to create this executive leadership team that helps shoulder some of the responsibilities, whether it's player transfers, player negotiations, player recruitment, performance, strategy. So it's really about creating a team around us that we can all pull the same direction and to try to be successful for the club.
But I'll give you a little other perspective. As I mentioned, he came over to my house the day after he signed to work on the roster. So he's at it right now. I know January 15th is not far away, but he's got targets in mind. It's happening right now. So stay tuned. I think you'll hear more in the offseason. We want to be active in the transfer market, so more to come.
Hi guys, Paul Tenorio from The Athletic. Staying on the topic of kind of doing both roles, obviously you had success with that in Columbus. The league has changed a lot since 2018. Not like you've gone anywhere, you've been here working in soccer. But how have you seen how the league changes? How does that change roster building as you dig into it now? And what kind of team do you want to build in Chicago, considering the different buckets, I guess, that now exist in MLS?
Yeah, I mean, I think the major addition has been, second teams and the growth of the academy system and how, that whole entity has developed. But to me, it's a lot more professional now. And that's what I'm excited about. It's really about the ability to recruit good people and sophisticated people to be able to be effective in the transfer market and bringing in top talent and then be effective in development. We want to be a player-first club. We want to be a club that puts the player in the center of everything, and each department works around the player to help maximize their potential. And in terms of recruitment, we think there's an opportunity this offseason to bring in some high-quality players, to bring in players that can perform in the top 5% of the league, real game changer type players, and we want to do that because. We have the ability to affect the roster in a positive way. And, it starts with next season. We're not saying this is a 5-year build. We want to be successful in year one.
Alex Campbell from CHGO, thank you both for taking the time to talk to all of us today. Gregg, you mentioned and Joe's mentioned your experience back in Columbus. How would you say you're different as a coach now returning to Major League Soccer than you were when you left it before taking over the U.S. men's national team?
Great question. And I think that, I strive to be a better coach every day and be better than last week. So, I think, the experience, I think the performance under pressure, the ability to deal with pressure, to compete in high level games, to adapt and thrive are all qualities that I've developed, with the national team. It's a job that you're expected to win each and every game you're in, no matter what game it is. And working, under under conditions that change rapidly, right? We always talk about, on you name your roster the week before, and then on Sunday you're holding your breath because there's 6 players that can't come, and you have to adapt. It's about working with what you have there. So all of that has made me a better coach and really prepared for this opportunity.
All right, thanks. We'll now take a couple questions from Zoom, starting with Jeff Carlisle from ESPN. Jeff, go ahead. Your line is open.
Thank you, Jamie. Hello, Gregg. Hello, Joe. Gregg, my question's for you. How did you go about processing the emotions surrounding your departure from the national team? And how did that process help you land in Chicago and take this current role?
Thanks, Jeff. Nice to hear from you again. So, it's a really difficult moment when you get fired as a coach. And I don't want to liken this to life and death at all, because it's not. You're still alive, but it is like mourning a death. And, you wake up the next day and you feel really bad. Your confidence takes a hit, and it's a really difficult moment. And, for me, it was really about being with my family in those moments, and giving myself the time and the freedom and the space to feel sad and feel bad. We didn't perform well in Copa America, and when you don't perform well at a high level, there's consequences. And, I take full responsibility for that, but it still hurts. And, when you get past that mourning period, you have support around you. Now it's about reflecting. Okay, what could I have done better? We got some information out to the players. We were able to get a lot of feedback that came back to me, and I analyzed it. I said, okay, how can I improve? How can I get better for this next opportunity? And then from there, you become motivated. All right, now I want the next opportunity. You get hungry again. And, during that period when I got hungry, there's a number of opportunities that I was looking at. And, I kept coming back to Chicago and the potential and the alignment. It's not every day that you get to work for a man like Joe Mansueto, who understands, what a top level is and how to build something that's really good and sustainable. And so I thought it was a great opportunity for myself and my family.
Excellent. Excuse me. We'll go next to Alex Calabrese from Men in Red. Alex?
Thanks, Jamie. Hey, Joe. Hey, Gregg. Nice to speak with you both today. Sorry I couldn't be there in the room today, but hopefully soon. Gregg, I want to ask a question for you. You've been through several interview processes in your career with U.S. Soccer, Club America, other MLS teams. So I'm curious, what was different about this process, and was there anything about it that impressed you about Joe and the Fire's vision?
I think how clear he was on the vision. We were going through the interview, and don't take this the wrong way, right? And there wasn't much excitement from Joe. It was hard to get a read on him, right? So I said, okay, I'm presenting for about an hour and a half, and finally I asked him about his vision for the club, and that's where he came to life. And that's like I get goosebumps telling this story, because it was really about what he wants to do for the city of Chicago. And that's when his eyes lit up, and he was really passionate about that. And I think that's the first moment that I really connected with him and in terms of this job, and said, if a guy's this passionate about building something for this city, that says a lot about him. And so, that's the story there.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Gregg. Next, we'll go to Charles Boehm from MLSsoccer.com. Charlie, your line is open.
Hi, guys. Thanks for your time today. This one or two is for Gregg. As was alluded to a little bit earlier, but a lot of us thought you'd be looking abroad at this stage in your career. You were reported to be very close to the Club America job. So I was just wondering what if you looked at that at working overseas, maybe when you were making your next move. And if you could speak a little bit in that sense on the Club America interaction and why you decided to stay in the city rather than maybe go and do something completely new after at the end of the M&T period.
Yeah, it's you factor everything into it. And, this was a moment in time where I chose for my family. And, as a player, you're selfish. You always go to the best opportunity, and you're moving and you're moving and you're moving. Then you get a coaching job and you're moving your family. And this was a moment where I said, this opportunity is so good. There's so much potential in this club, and my family gets to be stable. They get to be in one place. My daughter gets to graduate from high school. She's a junior now. And that was a big part of the decision. And, Europe has always been an ambition of mine, and it's not binary. Just because I came here, it doesn't mean there's never going to be an opportunity in Europe. But right now, this is the best opportunity for me and my family.
We're glad you live in Chicago.
Thank you for doing this, gentlemen. Jim Alexander here with Real Talker. Gregg, we didn't hear from you since obviously this is the first time really here. Wanted to get your thoughts on the Pochettino hire, and do you plan on reaching out to him, maybe fostering a relationship, especially since there are some young players on the Fire that might get opportunities now with the national team that they might be looking for new players too?
Yeah, I already have a relationship with him. He's a great guy. I think he's a great hire for U.S. soccer. Top coached at the top level, knows what pressure's like, knows how to perform in pressure situations. So, I think it's a really good hire. And, I can assure you that there will be a relationship, and we will be able to count on each other, both, us supplying him players and hopefully getting feedback from him also.
Good afternoon. Here, Andrea Montolivo from the Spanish news agency EFE.
Hello.
Thanks for your time. You talked about potential in the team. One of the players that most impressed me since I started covering the team 3 years ago here in Chicago is Carlos Terán from Colombia. I think he has a huge potential. I was wondering what you think about him, because he's for sure a great defender that he still has a lot to grow. Thank you.
You have a good eye, because I see the same thing. I see a player with a ton of potential. And, you don't often get that type of package in a center back, being that commanding physically, that adequate on the ball. And I think he has the potential to be a top center back. It hasn't gone exactly the way he'd like it, for his time in the Chicago Fire. And it's just about having conversations with him. And really trying to, understand his point of view and where he's coming from. But I agree with a player with high potential.
Hi, Coach. Liz Jimenez from LA 107.9 FM. I would like to ask about, do you have that feeling from the fans, that sense of urgency to have this team in the top 5 of the league and see again the Chicago Fire in the best places to see now? Do you feel that urgency? And if you can give us a preview, can we have any big name player coming to Chicago?
Well, I hope there's a sense of urgency with the fan base. But I got to say that it is a two-way street. We're going to do our best to put a product on the field that they can be proud of, but we also need them to come to the stadium and create this environment in the stadium that really, intimidates the opponent. I've played in Chicago before where the stadium was sold out, and it's difficult. It was a difficult game to play in. And so, that's what I'd ask the fans is, have the urgency, have the demands on us, but also come out and support us and really get behind us and make the stadium a fortress that teams don't want to come play at. In terms of the big name, as you mentioned, our focus is getting quality that's going to help the roster. If it's a big name, that's great. If it's not a big name, that's also great. If there's quality enough to really help us be successful on the field. Thank you.
Great. We'll go to Brian Sandalo on Zoom. Brian, your line is open.
Thank you, Jamie, and thank you, Gregg and Joe, for doing this. This one's for Joe. You've owned the team now for 5 years. What have you learned about MLS during that period, and how did you apply that to this search? Thanks.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed my 5 years in MLS. The league has changed dramatically since I came in 2019. It's grown like this. You can't see my hand, maybe Brian, but up and to the right. It's been strongly growing. The arrival of Messi, the Apple deal, Leagues Cup, a loosening of the roster rules to allow more spend. I'm super excited about MLS. I've learned, that success on the sporting side doesn't come, overnight. It's a journey. I think we're laying the foundation. I wish it would come sooner. I hope it's in our near future. But building the performance center, getting the right leadership, all of these things take time. And there is no magic playbook. There's no book. You follow these 10 steps and you're going to win the MLS Cup. There's an art to all of this. You can look at a roster. Individually, the players look terrific. When you put them together, there's an art to that. And does it gel or does it not gel? And even when you evaluate acquisitions, you look back and, a player may have performed in a certain way in a certain environment with other players around that player, your target. And, that coach, that league is different. And, cultural change as you move people. It's a real art, to identify talent, bring them here. And, it takes really, experienced people who can try and weigh all these things. And it's a batting average game. No one bats 100% on their acquisitions. And so what you want is a high batting average. Every time you sign a player, you see the positive and you don't know what really could go wrong. And so again, I've learned it's taken a little longer than I thought. I think we're on the right path. The business side is more in my wheelhouse. I think we're doing a great job. Dave Baldwin, our president's in the back there. On his phone, I can see doing deals. But the business side is humming under Dave's leadership. Now I think we've got, great sporting leadership. We've got the performance center coming online. And so I think we're getting there. And but I think I've learned it's a journey. It's nothing you can, snap your fingers and you've got overnight success.
Wonderful. Next, we'll go to Omar Ramos. Omar?
Hello. Jamie, thank you very much. Joe, congratulations on the hire. Gregg, welcome to La Ciudad de los Vientos. I want to start off by saying happy birthday going out to Mauricio Pineda. I know it's his birthday today. Gregg, have you had the chance to talk to some of the players, and what has the reception been like? By the way, my name is Omar Ramos. I do the Spanish broadcast on 1200 a.m. for the Chicago Fire con Raquel Ortiz. Welcome to Chicago, and I'll be on standby for your answer.
Thank you, Omar. There's always uncertainty when new leadership comes in. And on the first day, Frank invited me to training. I was able to speak to the players, and the message to the players was, we'll get you information. We'll communicate with you as soon as possible. And I'm working through the entire roster. And by tomorrow, I'll have the whole roster completed. And really just giving them direction, where they stand with the team moving forward, expectations for the future. And it's been great to hear from them. And it's really identifying areas to improve and, buckets to improve in. I think the guys are trying hard. They're doing their best, but we need to be better. And, part of that is really about raising the standards, holding them accountable to these high standards, and then working together. And the conversations have been really good with the players, and look forward to continue them and finishing them tomorrow.
All right, we'll now go to Joe Lowry on Zoom. Joe?
Thank you, Jamie. Joe Lowry from Backheel.com. Joe, thank you for taking the time. Gregg, thank you as well. It's nice to speak to you again. Gregg, this is for you. You talked earlier about how you've changed as a coach and how that's always an evolution. I'd like to drill into that specifically on the tactical side. After your style changed from Columbus to the national team, and then maybe certainly changed during your national team tenure to become more aggressive and direct, what is your stylistic vision for the Chicago Fire on the field? Thanks.
Great question. Part of the national team shift and pivot was looking at our player pool. We had a very dynamic midfield, a very aggressive wingers. We wanted to take advantage of the speed and the pressing ability. And we're able to, to make that change and be much more aggressive, much more proactive as a nation, which was something, I think, a positive turn. Looking forward to Chicago, we want to be a dominant team. We want to be a team that controls the ball. We want to be a team that's not afraid of any other team in the league. We want to be a team that can hurt other opponents, and hurting them both offensively with the ball, but also defensive compactness, being able to maintain our shape, maintain our structure, be difficult to penetrate. And it's really, I think, when I look at the Columbus team and the national team, I really think it's in the middle of both of them, because in MLS there are more open spaces. You can take advantage of spaces that are between the lines and a stretched field. So we want to certainly be able to do that offensively, and then defensively, how are we able to control the opponent and really limit the danger that they're able to create against us.
Hi, guys. Danny Ecker from Crane Chicago Business. This is a question that I guess has maybe parts for both of you. Gregg, I'm wondering how big a deal were facilities in your mind as you were evaluating the picture of, why you wanted to be here? Not just the performance center, but the future of where the Fire will play games long term for you. And Joe, perhaps maybe you could give us a bit of an update on the stadium front, whether or not it's probably not by choice the Fire have found themselves in this broader stadium discussion that we're having in Chicago. I wonder if you've made any progress toward a long-term stadium solution, whether or not it's at Soldier Field or somewhere else, and anything you're able to share on that front.
You want to start?
Sure. So on our stadium situation, as you know, we play in Soldier Field, an iconic stadium, a wonderful stadium. I know there's some folks from Soldier Field here today. But at the same time, it has limitations. We have to be honest. We share the stadium with the Bears, concerts. And so the warm summer days and fall days are really precious. And we'd love to have as many of those days as possible. But we often get conflicted out with the Bears and concerts. And so we prefer not to have to play on the bookends when it's cold in Chicago in the winter, early spring, or late in the fall. And so the scheduling, is certainly an issue with Soldier Field. Certain sponsorship categories are blocked out. Non-game day access to the pitch is sometimes an issue. So those are the limitations. And so we are active in looking for a stadium, a soccer-specific stadium for the Fire. So we've been doing site tours. We're looking around. And to me, it's the last piece of the puzzle with this club. I think, when I came in 5 years ago, we revamped, we moved first to Soldier Field, which was a good move. We've revamped the business side under Dave Baldwin. Now we have new sporting leadership. We have the Endeavor Health Performance Center coming online. The last piece is the stadium. And we don't have the optimal solution there because of the limitations I referenced. And so having our own soccer-specific stadium is what we'd like to see. And so we're actively pursuing that. And if we can find the right parcel in Chicago, I think we'll move forward on it.
From my standpoint, it was really just about if we say we want to be this type of club, how do we back that up? And you back it up with facilities. And, when I saw the Endeavor Health Center, I was blown away. I toured it the other day, and it's, again, it's one of the top training facilities in Major League Soccer, one of the top facilities in the world. So, it's hard enough to sometimes in Major League Soccer to get the high quality players, but this will certainly help attract players. You have the city of Chicago, Soldier Field right now, the iconic Soldier Field that we're playing in, and then you add the the performance center to it, and it's a really compelling situation for the players.
All right, thank you both. We have one more hand raised on Zoom, so I'll go next to Tom Hindle from Goal. Tom, your line is open.
Hi guys, thanks for doing this. Tom Hindle from Goal.com. I suppose this is a question for both of you, but first, Gregg, what would be considered a success in 2025?
I think two things. First of all, like a very clear identity on the field. When you look at our team, you should see something very similar game over game, and it should be very strong, very established. The second thing would be making the playoffs. I think that is, that's a minimum requirement in MLS, and that's what we're striving for next year. And really, it's just about being a consistent top performer, throughout the years. But it needs to start with an identity, and then actually making that first step.
Great. All right. Looks like we don't have any more questions in the room or on Zoom. So we'll conclude today's press conference with just a quick photo opportunity with Joe and Gregg. So if I can invite the photographers to come up towards the front of the room, that would be fantastic.